Welcome to a Brief History Conspiracy.
This episode, the Anunnaki.
So, the Anunnaki came to Earth about 400,000 years ago, so that's where we are in the chronology, from a planet called Nibiru.
Yes, Nibiru supposedly being the 10th planet orbiting around our sun.
Planet X.
Planet X.
This is, we've discussed this in previous episodes. If you go back and look at our moon episodes, we've already sort of chatted about this a little bit. But basically, yeah, this planet's on a 3,600 year orbit, a very
elliptical orbit on a different plane around our sun.
Yeah, so it goes way the fuck out and then comes back, and it's not, all the rest of our planets are on quite a plane. We think that might be on a completely different plane to the rest of the planets, don't we?
Yeah, and it was backed up by some evidence from the NASA IRAS satellite in 1984, which detected something of 4 to 8 Earth masses out there perturbing the orbits of...
Yeah, we've been looking for this for years, haven't we? Because, I mean, is it Neptune's got a bit of a wobble to its orbit that they've never been able to understand, and we thought initially it was Pluto, then they actually did the math, and they go, well, like, Pluto's not big enough and not a planet, apparently. I miss Pluto.
It's very spherical, though, isn't it, Pluto?
Yes, it looks like a planet to me. So the idea is that they came to Earth 400,000 years ago, basically looking for gold. They came to South Africa, where we've got all the gold mines still today.
Yes.
Set up a city called Eridu, or Earth Station 1, which sounds cooler. I want to, you know, if I had a thing, I would have Earth Station 1.
Is that the ruins in Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
I believe that refers to, isn't it?
It also sounds like a Jerry Anderson TV show.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds are go at Earth Station 1.
It does very much so, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah. So then we're basing this on the Sitchin version of this story. There are other versions, we'll discuss it a little later. So yeah, the Anunnaki, sometimes also called the Nephilim, the sons of gods and daughters of men, that is supposed to translate to.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the Bible refers to a race of giants, doesn't it, as the Nephilim, which is believed to be the same as the Anunnaki.
I think, yeah, as we go through the story, we'll really talk about how there are a lot of similarities between basically what we call the Anunnaki and what we consider as like angels in some ways. Or maybe that the angels in the Bible are a metaphor for this alien species.
Kind of, yeah. Fallen angels, weren't they? With the sons of gods that came to Earth and mated with the daughters of men. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it's described in the Bible in relation to the Nephilim.
And as we go through the story, we see those connections. And the Anunnaki actually is supposed to come from An, at the start, is supposed to mean God of Heavens, and they're supposed to be the descendants from the God of Heaven. So, I mean, that is really what angels are, and the angels were made by God.
The descendants of the gods of the sky, isn't it? Yeah. An being the sky. And...
Exactly, yeah. And they're supposed to be, they were decreed by An to be the, decide the fate of man. So, I mean, again, that sounds like angels. Another element of the Anunnaki is that they're supposed to be the 7 judges, and that's another link because there was these 7 archangels.
Yes.
So there are these. You can see why people sort of started making these connections, I think. Oh, okay.
Yeah, numbers are very important, I suppose, when they crop up in stories and when they're repeated through stories through multiple cultures.
No, exactly, yeah. And I think that gives them more credence when we see them in different.
They tend to relate to the geometry of our planet in some way, shape, or form, or of stars they're observing. Or
so the Igigi, who apparently they're not the Anunnaki, but they seem to be related, and they seem to live thousands of years as well, were being used to dig all the gold up. They got pissed off because they didn't like spending thousands of years in mines. Weird. So they had a civil war. Anunnaki bashed them.
I suppose it's possible that there was another humanoid being called the Igigi that wasn't directly the Anunnaki living here at that point in time. Perhaps not now. Perhaps back then.
There seems to be little information about this or what exactly the Igigi were. There's other myths about the Igigi being the gods of the heavens, where the Anunnaki, the gods of the underworld, but they seem to be always related as old gods. But we don't really know. It seems to be vague and it seems to have different... This is the big problem with it. A lot of the stuff with the Anunnaki is that we've got different stories.
Yes. And the timescales that you're looking at is going back so far, much further than recorded history. nothing's going to have a lot of...
This War of the Olden Gods is supposed to have happened 380,000 years ago. I don't know where that number comes from. Well, it comes from the Sumerian texts and things apparently, but I don't know how they calendared that.
No, nor do I. And I imagine there's a lot of argument over the exact chronology of this as well.
So then, Enki, who was one of the first Anunnaki to come here, and she's supposed to be like as a female, she's supposed to be like a doctor figure or a scientist. She decided, well, the Igigi are gone, we still want the gold, we're not digging it up, so we will create a genetically engineer species to dig the gold up for us.
And was creating some spliced creatures, such as our mythical creatures, as Minotaurs.
As well, they went down into they still exist now in the underworld, and like Minotaurs and all this sort of thing. Anything basically you think of from myth, Enki, that's just Enki playing around. According to this, some of these stories, and then she focused on Neanderthal man. So
in this chronology, then, so they took Neanderthal man, and
spliced
some of their genes in and upgraded him into perhaps us. And then,
initially, we were all sterile, so no sex.
Supposedly, we were all sterile, and then.
And they actually programmed in our love for gold, because we love gold, and that kind of explains that to me, to be honest, because I don't like gold. I think it's ugly. You know, people are dripping in bloody
gold.
I don't think it's a nice looking metal at all. But we seem obsessed with it.
It does make sense if you think if they were here to mine gold and they created us to mine the gold for them, all the gold that we did mine they would come and collect from us. So gold would still be very scarce and rare. So any that they did let you keep
would become even more valuable.
But I just think more valuable. Hence the royalty would adorn themselves with it to show that the gods had given them some of the gold, perhaps.
But also, if we're programmed so that they could bugger off and leave us to it, and then come back, and then they just go, thank you. If they actually physically program into us this love for gold, then that would kind of make sense as well. That we would adorn ourselves with it because we're programmed to love it. And then, but that kind of makes sense to me. Out of all the gold that we dig up today, we use over a third of it in jewellery, a third of it in technology, and that's only really become in the last 30 years or so. Before then, almost all the gold we dig up was used for jewellery.
Yeah.
And then the other third is used for other stuff, just whatever. But it doesn't really, in lots of ways, make sense that we have such a obsession with gold, particularly a few hundred years ago, before we realised how actually it's got really good properties in computers and things like this. We weren't using it for that. We just use it pretty much as money. It doesn't really make sense. Why were we so obsessed with it?
I think gold coins were like more what's the word, like. They weren't frequently used in the past. Most coinage was silver. Again, that probably relates to the fact that the gods came to take the gold. So if to trade in a currency, you wouldn't want to use what you were coming here to mine.
No, but my point is it was valuable.
Oh yeah, it was valuable.
It was valuable. But then its value doesn't make sense in lots of ways.
Because it only has...
100 years ago or 200 years ago, why was there a gold rush in California?
Yeah, it only has a value based on what society deems it,
because people liked it as
jewelry.
Now it's got more value because they realise it's a really good insulator. It's good at
a really good conductor.
Things. A good conductor. So we use it more now, but back then, I don't know why we were doing it.
It does have some interesting properties. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the Anunnaki then, and through Enki, created this slave race, humans, to gold, and initially infertile. We got the Adamu that you mentioned.
Yeah, supposedly that's where the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis comes from, isn't it? And this links into
another link to the Bible.
The Adamu species being created by
and there's a place in South Africa called Adam's Calendar that still exists today that they think is one of the oldest sites.
Yeah, another Stonehenge type place.
Yes, it's very much like Stonehenge.
Celestial alignments to solstice.
And I think it might be as old as Göbekli Tepe. We're talking 10, 12,000 years old potentially.
Or possibly even older.
Even older, yeah.
So that links in. And the whole story of Eve being made from the rib of Adam also ties in with the Anunnaki creation story, as supposedly they were infertile, so they would have had to have used Adam and DNA in order to make Eve,
genetically modified,
and then any further, and that would also explain how the creation story in the Bible. There's very little. There's very little problems from massive amount of inbreeding when you put it to one woman and one man starting everything off. Whereas if you're
no
actually
problem with
doing
the brothers and sisters, making more babies.
If you were manipulating DNA and creating people artificially in test tubes, then that whole sort of like bottleneck idea in the gene pool doesn't matter. So the whole Adam and Eve and the actual what we know about genetics then starts to make a bit more sense as well.
Well, it's less creepy. Yeah. Definitely, it's less. There's less incest going on.
Yes,
which is lovely. We don't like incest. Even though there was, mathematically speaking, there must have been a lot of incest in our species, because it just doesn't. There weren't enough of us a few hundred thousand years ago.
Yeah, so, or even in the last ice age, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we went down to about 10,000 of us. There was a bit of cousins going on, but I have a genetic thing that I was born with, and a doctor generally asked me, "Your parents cousins?" Oh, they're both from Dawley, it's quite possible. So, let's be honest. They're not cousins, we checked. So a lot of the information we're talking about comes from ancient Sumerian texts, Akkadians, this sort of region.
Was it the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians?
Exactly. So these are basically the 4 or 5 cities relatively close to each other. Their myths
in Mesopotamia
mingled and that region.
They all have the gods. They all have the Anunnaki as the deities, don't they?
They all seem to have slightly different versions of the story, but
and the gods obviously names vary, I believe, as well, and
slightly, But the particularly in Sumeria, though, was where a lot of this comes from. They were very good at writing all this stuff down, and they had the list of the kings where they wrote down several generations of these kings that lived for hundreds of even thousands of years, and this stuff was seemed to be recorded as if it was true. It wasn't recorded. It seemed to be a lot of effort to record a myth if they didn't actually believe it. It was stuff that they seemed to have tried to record. And
that ties in with the Bible again, with
Noah was supposed to live for 700 years, was it?
Patriarchs. They supposedly live for, again, 1,000 years, reign for 1,000 years, and it's weird that you have more than one culture all reporting that we used to live a lot longer.
And this was because of the
next
next step is where shit really started to go wrong. First of all, I think the Anunnaki decided, well, easiest way of getting a few more human beings is to let them breed. So we started breeding. The next decision was probably a little poorer. And then I said around 100,000 years ago, the Anunnaki started breeding with man. And this is going back to the Nephilim, called the sons of gods and daughters of men. That's where sort of the Nephilim idea comes from. And they were like demigods. If you go Greek mythology, that sort of thing.
Demigods.
Which I think is another link into another type of mythology, that this is a similar thread story, that humans and the gods mating and creating a demigod.
Fallen angels in the Bible, linking,
Yeah, and this then created like a bloodline, which some would say we still see today, because we still have kings and queens that are supposed to be ordained by God.
Yeah, well, supposedly
is this a thing of the bloodline?
Some of these demigods were chosen, weren't they, by the Anunnaki to rule over the rest of man.
Sometimes called the enlightened ones as well, as if they knew something we didn't.
It also explains everything with, like you said, royal bloodlines and direct line back to your creator. I suppose it's a direct bloodline back to the Anunnaki, to what we deemed as
which is then a direct bloodline to God. In An.
Which is why royal bloodlines are so important over the last several thousand years for recorded history, that we know that they've been.
Again, you could argue it was just that the kings had power, so therefore they had control and trust, and people believed these things, and that's how they had the power because people allowed them to have the power.
Yeah.
Or you can believe that people believed they were ordained by God.
Yeah.
They were special. And then they interbred a lot, and our royal family all went.
Yes, there was a lot of inbreeding because of the pure royal bloodlines.
Cousins marrying. Jesus. He goes, they're only first cousins, they're alright. They're not blood related. He goes, we have to go 2 generations, they are blood related. Anyway, never mind.
I suppose that's us not understanding the genetics properly, but trying to keep a bloodline pure back to...